All right, so today's MVP meeting, the agenda here is ecosystem updates and follow-up is which I will do. MVP program and discussion, which is something I'm going to lead and, going to be kind of an open-ended discussion here for you all. I've got some partner programs and updates. I've got Ash here with GitHub security updates. I don't know that that's accurate. I think he's going to talk a little bit about product, and I will turn it over to him at that moment. Then we will have updates from any of the ecosystem advisory group leaders who are here, David and Will, and David and I will kind of co-do this one for the partners since we're kind of working together on that. Then we'll have open session Q&A, and then we will have closed session as if there's anything people don't want recorded and reposted out to the community. That will be the time when we discuss that. So I don't know that this is going to take extremely long time, but we will get through it here. All right, so just some updates and follow-ups. Welcome. We are definitely glad to have you guys here. DNN Summit, several of you went to DNN Summit last week, and just some things happened there that, I'd like to highlight. The first thing is that the keynote speeches by Andy and Sean, plus the open panel at the end of the first day, all of those were live streamed. And so Dennis Schau and Will Stroll assisted with the live streaming of the speeches. And I did not go to the conference. I mean, I think everybody knows, we had our first child or whatever. So being away from the event, having those keynotes and that open panel live stream really made me feel like I was there. So I was very appreciative of that. I've told Dennis that several times. And so I think it's something that A, was different that happened this year, and B, I hope that we continue to do that going forward. I hope the guys at DNN Connect will live stream some stuff, because it was kind of like the glue that kind of made you feel like you were there if you were following online with social and all that. So that was good. Canteras won Partner of the Year. Also, they open sourced a tool called PolyDeploy, which I think several of you probably are aware of. But if you're not aware of it, we covered it in the DNN Digest. So if you want a link to it, it is on the DNN Digest blog that I posted. Somebody will probably post it here in the chat. But PolyDeploy is very powerful. I'll let any of the people who are here chime in about it, but it is a tool that was internal to Canteras that they use, and it allows you to install multiple extensions essentially within one click, and I think dependencies and things like that are built in. So you can imagine, let's say you use NV QuickSight to install DNN in under a minute. David, I hit your tagline. Then you use PolyDeploy to, let's say when you build a site, you have 10 third-party or custom modules that you always use. Well, currently you'd have to go and install all 10, like 10 different processes. Well, with PolyDeploy, you could go in and you could just batch do them, all together. So if you look at NV QuickSight, PolyDeploy, and then Prompt, which is coming, you could install DNN, install all your modules, and configure your site relatively quickly. So was anybody that, or are there any MVPs here that were sat in the PolyDeploy session that would like to add commentary? Maybe I didn't do it.
The only thing I'm going to add, I've talked with Canteras quite a bit. I expressed some concerns about the security of that installation until their next release comes. So I would love to see us as a community at least reviewing what's out there, because I think it is a great thing, but with the initial release, there's some stuff that wouldn't pass security audits and could cause a pretty big problem. So, from my perspective, I think it's amazing, but reviewing and playing with it and, helping them with anything we can security-wise, I think would be fantastic if it's going to get deployed into the wild.
Yeah, and Mitchell, if you look in the chat, the guys are dropping some pull requests. I will also say this is like Canteras' kind of first dip of their toes into open source stuff. and the guys like Stroll submitted a pull request or an issue, and the guy it was very thorough, and they were appreciative, and I think they're kind of feeling the love with everything there. So, and Mitchell, they're saying some of these security items will be addressed. I know one of the things I read, they said you could like whitelist the IP addresses or something that can install. Stroll, Poindexter, you guys were in that session and have been filing issues. Anything you want to add to that? All right, I'll take the awkward silence as a note. Okay.
Oh, I was looking. I didn't realize I was not muted. I thought I was muted. I was looking for the mute button. I wasn't muted at all the whole time. No, so they were very responsive to any and all feedback, and they already said even during their session when we were presenting it, how they're going to secure. There's some database information that they need to secure, and they're already aware of that, and that's going to probably be in their next release. But I've already submitted one pull request. It got accepted almost immediately, and I've been working with them to kind of like help with the kind of the productization of it a little bit, because there's things missing like install packages and stuff like that, but they're well on their way. And we also I've been talking to them about some other administrative tools that we would all very, very much benefit from, that are going to be, they basically have a plan to, like, over the next 12 months have like 5 or 6 different like extensions out there that are all open source that do these types of things.
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate the insight there, Mitchell. So maybe you could check the GitHub thing, and whatever concern that you had, maybe it's being addressed, or maybe you can.
Yeah, it's the database security stuff. My only reason for mentioning it in this group is if it gets widely deployed the way it is right now, it will be a security exploit that then you'd be able to bulk install stuff maliciously using the old hack that nobody else has been fixing themselves from, in combination with that information not being secured. That was the only reason why I'm concerned about it.
Gotcha. No, well, that's a healthy concern to have, and I'm glad you brought it up, and glad they are addressing it, because Lord knows we don't want anything like that to happen again.
Yeah, no, they were great about it.
Good deal. All right, so next thing is that Site Improve in conjunction or in tandem with Engage, and I think Brian Dukes is here. They released, or they are releasing a module which will really help with accessibility. So in a previous life, I was a webmaster at county government, and we went through a migration, it was like from SharePoint to MOS 2007. It was very painful. But once we got on the other side of that migration, we were using Site Improve, and oh man, it was an awesome tool. It is an awesome tool for allowing you to see, like, hey, this hyperlink on this page doesn't have alt text, or this link is broken, or this image doesn't have alt text. So when you, like, if you have government clients or anybody where ADA compliance is critical, I think this tool will be very helpful. Brian, is there anything you want to add to that?
No, I mean, yeah, so it's a service where they're looking at kind of the public display of your website. And so the integration with DNN is just kind of a little widget that sits there on the page that gives you kind of a quick access to what they've decided about your page, what your issues are. And then a piece that automatically rechecks a page, when you publish the page, if you're using page workflow, or when you edit content. And kind of some of that when you edit content is a little fuzzy, but it should handle kind of the majority of the use cases. Yeah,
good deal. Appreciate it, Brian. Yeah, and they demoed the integration. It looked like it was a pretty slick integration. So good job. Kudos, Brian, to you and your team and the team at Site Improve. They're, I think, considering listing it in the store, and they're going to have some marketing come out around it, like blogs and things like that. So like I said, if you do have sites where accessibility is, important, I would encourage you to check out this module when it is released. And again, they're working on making the announcements. The other thing, DNN Summit conference video recaps have posted. So I made 3 different videos. One was the conference, one was conference plus slopes, and another was just the slopes video, because last year I got in trouble for having too much slopes in the video. Was there anything else that happened at DNN Summit, like, I don't know, announcements or releases or anything like that, that anybody from this group wants to add to this section?
I just had a question for the MVP group. I got some client feedback after the one keynote was live streamed that the message was a bit alarming, most specifically around Sean's keynote. I was just curious if anyone else had customers or anybody that you've interacted with that took a somewhat negative tone from that keynote.
I'll jump in. I had a conversation with Sean in the bar that scared me, and his closing address kind of calmed me down.
Yeah, a side note to that, and I think I've talked to a few of you guys about this. Phil Weggers, and a buddy of mine, a lot of you guys probably know him. He was at that we're talking about, from web forms to ASP.NET Core, where it was a large break, and he said that compared to that meeting, we were pretty civil because there was people angry and threatening to leave. So I mean, I guess what I would tell your clients is, we're technologists, we're passionate about what we're doing, we're trying to do the best for everyone, and this is not an uncommon situation where we have to have these difficult conversations sometimes in a public forum. And I mean, again, you can compare it to some other conferences that we've been to in similar situations where it can get ugly, and comparatively ours was civil.
And to be quite honest, it is kind of a scary time.
Gotcha. Well, appreciate the feedback there, and maybe we can continue that in the open session here at the end. We'll try to push through some of this so that we can discuss some of those items. Let's see here. So follow-ups. One of the items from a previous MVP meeting, I think 2 months ago, was to get DNN software to run on HTTPS. So I did, as I mentioned, file a JIRA request, and they were actually updating it today. So there is research and progress being gone. I think DNN software is running on Azure and using Cloudflare, and there's a little bit of I don't know, intricacies maybe in between, like how you get it to work on both systems. That's not obviously my ballpark. So, but there is progress being made. I don't know, Ash, do you have any updates about that? Have you been following that item?
Yeah, Claire, I think you've got the same updates. So you're absolutely right. The progress is there. It's not done yet. Of course, this is such a huge site, so the guys want to do a little bit of research and make sure that they're doing everything that needs to be done and get it done. So I do suspect a couple of more weeks, and then hopefully by the time we meet again, it should be all done. Because this has to be done. This is very important, because that's the only way you know that this is a real DNN software, right? There's one way. The certificate, so it has to be done.
Yep, and it seems that will span DNN software and the store, and it's not just login and checkout, but it would be
The entire thing. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So also, DNN Connect is coming up, as everybody knows, and we have placed banners on the forum and on the DNN store as well. So you may have seen those. I posted a little update to Facebook about it, but we definitely want to help promote and show love for DNN Connect. Also, DNN Store, and you guys are aware of DNN Go and the security and all that stuff, and there's a pretty active forum thread going on about DNN Go and DNN. So there are updates and things going on in the background just to make you guys aware. We are communicating with the contact at DNN Go. Their themes have been cleared to go back on the store, and we are awaiting final review from the vendor, and then they should be live. And I'm definitely going to update the forum thread when they are back on the store. And so we're reviewing their themes before they post them, and we will also review any modules that they are wanting to post. So there is progress being made there. Also, in one of the ecosystem advisory group meetings we had, the notion of well, actually, Oliver Hines, the next bullet point, Oliver Hines rocket fuel, which is, I think, part of his InBrain suite, I believe. He's considering contributing that as open source to the DNN core. And the question was, okay, how do we do that? And so in that EAG meeting, Oliver kind of demoed and showed that functionality. And so Ash is working on a blog that will essentially articulate how someone could contribute something to OSS. So like if you build something, that's awesome, but there's going to be like, a code review by, multiple people and things like that. And I mean, Ash just mentioned this a day or two ago, so I don't think he's got the blog ready yet, but it's in progress. Is that accurate, Ash?
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, good deal. So
I do want to say one thing about the DNN Go, Clint, is that, so we did work with them sometime back when the vulnerability was found, and they fixed it at that time, but we continue to keep them out from the store for just to be cautious. So we did review again recently, but again, we don't go very deep, right? We don't have the abilities to go deep. And there's no guarantee that a subsequent update might not bring a vulnerability back. So always ask those tough questions to the module vendors that how you're dealing with. This is a continuous process, right? That they have to own. As a DNN Corp, this was just one odd case where pretty much all the major vendors had this problem, and we communicated with them. But they were more notorious in terms that they had a wider impact because they're probably more popular. But regardless, going forward, is the module vendor who are responsible for making sure that their stuff is secure and also performs well in high loads. That's it.
Gotcha. Thanks for the update. Or to added insight there, Ash. So the next topic that I had here is, just the MVP program in general. So sometimes people ask me, what is an MVP? Like, what is a DNN MVP? Like, how do I become an MVP? When are people inducted, right? Is it just like a secret handshake group, or what is the deal? So I think we need to, get some clarity around this and, kind of figure out what exactly an MVP is, right? So, I mean, obviously MVP should be leading the community, right? And in the past, we had leaderboards that were available and people could see, like ecosystem points. Earlier I'd said, most MVPs should be active in ecosystem advisory groups. So if you're not in an advisory group, I again encourage you to be in a ecosystem advisory group. But as part of like some of the updates that we're hoping to, roll out here in the future, we talked about the open source functionality that Sean and the team at Hotcakes are running on their site, where they can track activities both on the site and in other areas such as like Stack Overflow, Twitter, Facebook, things like that. So hopefully we can get that code and get it in place on dnnsoftware.com. We would also need it to span the DNN store. and then have a roll up like in between, you know, hey, you wrote a review for a store item, you get a point or whatever. And then we need to expose those leaderboards again. And so once we get that in place, then we can come up with the parameters for how you become an MVP. So, right, it would be like either twice a year or once a year or whatever the frequency is. We come up with, you know, you have to have this many points or contributions or whatever that may be. So I don't have all these answers right now, but I think the key to being able to articulate this outwardly on the site, have the program, you know, running as everyone expects, is to get that essentially the ecosystem points system in place, right? And that's going to take us having to get some code that Sean and those guys have open sourced and get it in place on our DNN site. So I know this is kind of a topic that, you know, a lot of you guys are passionate about. I'm passionate about it too. And I hope that we can bring some clarity around it. So once we get those in place and we can identify the areas that we need to track, then we can assign the point values to those. And I don't think it should be that, you know, I just go and assign like, hey, you get 10 points for blogging. I think that's something we should discuss here as a group and kind of update the weights, or maybe we have like a Google Doc where we all kind of adjust it as needed. So anybody got any comments about that? I mean, I know the key is like us getting the code from Sean and getting it implemented into DNN software, but do you guys have any thoughts around that? Everybody's quiet. I'm checking cameras over here. All right, so it's pretty much is just the waiting game of like, all right, when are you going to get it done, right? Because I think everybody wants it done, and you know, because we need to be inducting MVPs more often. And if you are active in an ecosystem advisory group, then you know the points would show that, right? And I think we should also have points for things like hosting conferences, speaking at conferences, and we can verify all that, right? Hosting user groups. So I've got a lot of information that I've been working on in the past, but again, the key is to kind of get this stuff articulated or implemented on the site. So maybe we can try to get that done as a item here sooner than later within the site. So Ash, maybe having to hit you up for you know, some roadmap on that if possible.
Right. Yeah. And Clint, you know, I've been MVP for Microsoft for 2 years, and now I'm no longer an MVP, but they do a great job. And of course, they're a very big organization.
Yeah.
We can get some ideas from them, and they do all of these things, right? They track everything. Or you're supposed to actually submit it, so they're a little bit outdated. I don't know how it's now.
Yeah.
It doesn't track automatically. There is a fixed date and month, and when things expire and whatnot. And they have also, of course, have a summit, so that there's an opportunity to, well, someday
Right.
do that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna make a follow-up item for myself, which is trying to find out how we can get that code from Sean and then get it implemented or modified or whatever we need to do to get it into our site. And EPT mentions here in the chat, you know, items not directly related to the site, such as user group meetings. And I totally agree with that. I mean, if you look at the crew, Southern Fried here in Charlotte, we've been running the user group for, I don't know, like what year is it? Probably 5, 6, 7, 8 years. And there's been no recognition as far as like within the community that, you know, the guys are hosting meetings. So I totally agree. All right. The next thing is the partner program update. So you guys, some of you guys are partners, some of you guys work for partners, some of you are not partners. But Andy did mention the partner program at the keynote. And there's a lot of questions about, you know, when's it going to be rolled out? What's the new, you know, partner program look like? So if you're in the ecosystem advisor group, the partner group, then you'll know kind of the plan that we are shaping. The overarching goal is to grow the ecosystem. And that is, we want to make a low barrier of entry for people who want to get started in their journey of being a partner. But we also want to have, you know, very high quality at the top end. And we also want to introduce new partner types, which would be obvious to everybody. like implementation partners, hosting partners, training partners, ISVs, things like that. And a lot of you guys, again, are aware based on the Slack conversations that are going on in the partner channel. But we are trying to get this accomplished sooner than later. We are going to send out an invite for a partner program webinar, which will be like us, conveying what the ecosystem has essentially collectively come up with as the criteria for the partner program. And one thing that I'm a fan of that Andy has instructed is that we're going to iterate on this, right? So we're going to start with one version, and we're going to make updates to it as we see fit based on feedback from the partners. And so the rollout on this is as soon as we can get this stuff built into the site. And again, we're going to try to schedule that partner webinar before, obviously, we just kind of roll this stuff out. So a lot of this stuff is going on behind the scenes, and you may or may not be aware of it. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up so that everybody is in the loop there. All right, so Ecosystem Advisory Group updates. Sean is not here, obviously. The technology Slack channel has some very rich, as I would describe it, conversations going on. Mitch has done some good work around the cloud, which like requirements, and Ash, I think, is going to review those. There's just a lot of conversations going on there. I don't want to try to summarize them all, but the technology piece, I think we all agree, is the most critical. And also Andrew Heffling, based on some of the conversations at DNN Summit, he has, and I don't know if I'm saying this correctly, but created a module that allows for raise your pages to run in the current DNN context, which could potentially make a soft or easier migration path if there were a new .NET Core solution. So can somebody post Andrew's GitHub link in the chat here so that others can look at that and be aware of that? That would be great. Peter's not here. I'm not really sure too much about what's going on in the developer group, except for I know Matt Rutledge is working on some templates. So like, for example, if you were to be a module developer, but yet you don't use Visual Studio, right? So he's building out some templates there. Will, do you have any updates that you'd like to share from the awareness group?
Well, we continue to push content out there, so we got that going for us, but we haven't had any traction in any of our goals over the past month because most of us have been focused on DNN Summit. So next month we'll have a better update, but yeah, everything's still chugging along. We have a lot of good activity. Gotcha.
All right, and yeah, so David, in the partner update, I kind of stole your thunder on that one, David, with my partner program slide. But we do continue to get new people enrolling into the ecosystem advisory groups. I think DNN Summit kind of promoted those a little bit more, and people are aware of it. So we're getting some new blood there. And you know, the partner group that David's running is the group that has helped shape the feedback that's going into the new partner program. And so I think you'll see a lot of those updates from that group. All right. So let me find my mouse here and click the next slide. Ash, did I totally skip you or did? All right. So before we do this, we will transition to Ash. So Ash, you need to share your screen. So if you can, I will stop my share, and if you can share your screen, you can show your items.
Sure. Hopefully you guys can see my screen.
Yep.
Okay, so I want to give a quick update on the product side on the DNN. So we'll go right into the 9.2 release. Now, this release has been in works for quite some time now, and given the acquisition and whatnot, and the resource alignment or realignment or the process realignment, it has been a bit delayed. Right now, we are closing off last few issues around page management. Now, page management was sort of rewritten and then there are some issues that are still there in the prompt. So we're waiting for those to close out. There's still a few issues on the dev side from that. And then once those are done, we'll start the regression. Typically, regression takes about 2 weeks. Now we have a newer team, so it might take a bit longer. We also do performance testing and security testing, so that also needs to be done. So we're looking at, we're hoping to wrap this up end of the month, but it looks like it's March first week, possibly second. But I don't think it'll be later than that because there's no development to be done. It's actually development all done. We just have to, from Andy's perspective, this is a first release he's doing after the acquisition, so it better be very good. So we don't want any patches or anything like that after that. So we're gonna take some time to make sure it's tested really well. So that's where we are with the 9.2 release. I do have a very high level release notes for 9.2, and it's kind of talks about both the platform as well as the evoke if you happen to be evoke customers. So I'm going to quickly go through, now I'm going to go through each line item, but as you can see here on the left hand side, this is the platform, number of updates here. Of course, in terms of new features, there are prompt and pages. There's also this connector that we have not really talked a whole lot about, and perhaps this should have been an item to demo in the DNN Summit, but we'll blog and do videos around it. It comes with Azure Storage Connector. It's a very nice way to manage connections to different platforms. There are lots of improvements, lots of framework level updates, remove 500 old APIs, deprecated APIs, which have been deprecated since 7.0 or before 7.0. New integration testing framework, we blogged about it. Lots of areas that have seen stabilization, journal, seek editor, whatnot. So it's a pretty big release from that perspective. And then on the basic, Evoke Basic have had some updates. Evoke content, primarily around liquid content, localization. There was a new feature added where you could start to localize the content within the liquid content. And of course, there's some updates into the Evoke Engage product as well. The next up is, I've got 2 more slides. One is in 2018 roadmap. A lot of people ask about it, and then I'll work with actually Oliver to make sure it's updated on DNN software. So there are 2 areas here. One is what is committed, and the other one is what is in consideration, right? So we'll go through this here on the committed side. Now, one thing, if you happen to interact with sort of Andy on from a very close up, he likes 2 things about everything: an owner and a timeline, right? If it doesn't have any of those, then we're just talking, right? So that's why every line item must have an owner, and that's how this roadmap is kind of presented here. So in terms of what is in the roadmap or what are some of the tasks, these are not necessarily product roadmap, but it is more like what are some of the tasks that we're working on. So one thing that from our CEO's perspective is that he wants what he calls it as L2 specs. And he's very big on spec, as you would hear. The whole organization is all around very, very detailed technical specs. And of course, the vision for DNN is that it needs to continue for the next 5 to 10 years. And there has been a lot of knowledge in people's head. And that's how DNN has operated, right? So in order to truly scale this knowledge, he has asked to any company that this ESW buys, they want to write detailed clone spec. Clone means how the system works today. And get it all written down, like deep architectural diagrams and whatnot. So I've been tasked to, given my years with DNN and my technical background, I've been tasked to do that. And I want to quickly show you what's being done. I've shared this link. This is public link now, and here is actually in this page. There are lots of items here, and I'm starting to work through it. Some are done, and many are in progress, and many have not started. But this is the whole job for this rest of the quarter for me. So I'm going to actually start with, like, there is a shared folder where all the documents are here, and I'm going to start with, for example, this clone spec. I click on it.
it sort of gives you the starting point for anybody who doesn't know what DNN is and want to develop or want to build solutions, build modules, and whatnot. Even from support organization, market, whoever wants to learn about it at a deeper level, this is the document where you want to start. Talks about, starts with history, some glossary here, what stands for what, how does DNN run, the book talks about the book, issue tracker, the technology stack, things like that, SQL Server, complex deployment, simple deployment, and lots of stuff. And then it will go into like different areas of DNN. And for example, if you look into the left-hand side, there are lots of empty places right now, file system, artifacts, so like that. I'll give you another quick look into what's been done around file system. So we've gone deep into this one and kind of inspected each and every important folder and the files. So of course, web config, portals folder, resource file, JavaScript file. So, how many folders and files, and just give you a very high level, at the same time, very detailed look into the whole, whole 9 yards around DNN. So this is a work in progress, and I'll continue. I'm the owner of that. I'll finish it at the end of the quarter. The next up is the porting of the liquid content. The specs have to be created. So again, it's my responsibility to see how it's done on the liquid content first, on the Evoke side. And then I'm going to be reaching out to some of you guys you have to validate it as well before we start development. Because that was done, the one in Evoke is very good, but it was done with certain things in mind. Now we are bringing it into the platform as a framework feature. So we want to make sure that it's good for the next 5 to 10 years, and the schema is right and whatnot. And we may want to get some inspirations from like Sitecore, other competing CMSs, Drupal. And not everybody has the right schema, but what is the minimum that we need, and kind of go from there. So I'll be reaching out to the technology group and kind of put that spec out there, and for you guys to review and kind of bless it, lack of a better word, that this is the right way to go. And then we'll go into the implementation of that, and hopefully it should end in the Q3. The other 2 items that are at least committed, now I'm talking about committed, is the cloud optimization, and he's pretty big on that. He wants DNN to be first-class citizens of the cloud, both AWS as well as Azure, and it has to be right into the platform. So Mitch and I, we spoke at the summit, and Mitch produced a document for me to take a look, so I'll review it this week. And then, so right now, I'll put Mitch as the owner. So at this stage, he's the owner. At the implementation stage, it might be, the owners might change, but it's kind of, that's where it is right now. So it's a good stuff going on there. And then the client dependency, as Clint said, Oliver presented it. I just need to clarify the process for him so we can set the ball rolling. Now, one thing I'll say quickly here is that in the past, we might have been a bit more either lenient in taking pull requests or being outright rejecting or not doing anything. And none of them were right. So we will be, in fact, encouraging people to do more pull requests, because one of the messaging that you would have heard at the summit was smaller DNN Corp and larger community. And the only way to do that is to have more participation. But we'll write some process around it that, when someone were to bless a pull request, it doesn't just mean, hey, this looks good. You got to be committed. You got to do some testing. You got to produce some artifacts that this is what you did, and this is why it is important for the run of platform for the next so many years. So we're not going to just take it at the face value of anybody, right? No matter how much history one might have, but it has to be a really full-fledged work so that everybody will benefit. And of course, we'll give the name here, just like we're doing here, and all the blogs and the digest and whatnot. So that will be there. Move on to the consideration. One thing that Andy is pretty big, and one thing he got based on our sales data and everything, is that we're pretty strong in the government and education
And it's because we're open source, and they like open source security and whatnot. And anywhere where there is .NET and open source, the vision is that we want to go there. So we're looking into what is that's missing in DNN or Evoke today, and how can we help the government and education. So I don't know if there's going to be any segmentation with regards to Evoke or DNN, but this is on my plate to kind of study. I've started studying, for example, Drupal's distribution for government and see what is missing. And of course, what I can tell is that the template is one thing, and of course, the accessibility is pretty big. So we'll see how we can bridge that gap and make it available, make it more easy to use for those two verticals. So this is it's a consideration because the work has not begun, but it's pretty much committed. I'll say that. I don't have a timeline on this yet, so we'll start working on it. Now the next three item is I'm going to speak about 5 minutes about these things. Is about the ASP.NET Core. So definitely it has to be done. But having said that, there's a caveat here. Is that I think Andy has said very clearly that we will not do it just for the sake of doing it. It has to bring value, but at the same time, Microsoft has to be behind our efforts. Means they should be willing to. I think, and I personally wasn't there when .NET was getting popular. I think around 2004-05. I got quite late, 2009, and people said that at Dev Connections when Microsoft highlighted, that was the big. Sort of the big growth for .NET. So they want to be at that point. We want to be at that point where we're actually on stage with Microsoft and they're promoting us. And that's how we can get the new blood, the new developers and whatnot into that. So that's that. We still have to work out how we approach Microsoft and how we set the ball rolling. But regardless of that, there are a few dependencies here. One dependency is that we have to have the L2 clone, the one that I'm working on, to be ready, so people can say that, okay, DNN has these high-level 20 features or architectural items, and how they can be, do they have a home in the .NET Core? Maybe some of these are, like you said, they don't need to be moved, or how we approach it. So he's pretty big up around specs, right? So this community has to kind of work together and help with writing of that .NET Core spec. And once the spec is written, or at least at a high level conceptually, people have an idea how we're going to approach that problem, we'll start talking with Microsoft to help us either give technical directions and or give marketing as well. If that doesn't happen, then we won't be able to move forward with this initiative. Now, one other thing that is also here is on the radar is it was brought up that Orchard 2.0 is already .NET Core compliant. This is a new, and the Orchard has written CMS into like 2 layers. One is the framework, and then the other one is CMS on top of this. This is the .NET Core base. So we're talking, why reinvent the wheel? They have already spent about 2 years. So is there an opportunity to look into their application framework and put all the DNN goodies into it, right? So that has to be given. This is a serious. I mean, this requires serious consideration, and we are going to be, as a group, like with the technology group, that we would want to go into and see if is that viable or not. If it's viable, then why not? There's nothing like, it's an MIT license. There's nothing like, hey, we want to be the first movers. If someone has gone there, why not just build on top of that, right? That's our DNN I by Spy, that's how it was built. So that's sort of the theory there. And so these things are all in consideration, and we're looking for owners here if somebody wants to jump in and help out. So there was one more talk, is that can we have a separate MVC pipeline? I know Andrew is doing some prototype, but it's far from actually getting this goal. So those are all things being talked in the technology group, and we don't really have a full picture as to how we approach that, but at least it's out there. And with time we'll get to know more, but that's where we are today.
So that's it from my side, Clint. If people have any questions, or we can go into the open session.
All right, appreciate that update, Ash. You guys have any questions for Ash around the roadmap or the considerations here? All right, I will take that as a no. Let's see how I can share my screen again.
I have to find out how I unshare my screen.
It's okay. I can just.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and really just the last slide that I've got is for the open session, just open Q&A. You guys got any topics, anything you want to discuss in the open, or do you want to move forward to the closed? I mean, I'm here to serve you. So what does anybody have here? And the gallery is kind of quiet. So nothing for the open. All right, so I'm going to let's see, where is my record button? I'm going to